Okay, I think we're on. I think we're live. Let's just get this here sorted out.
Alert from Ob Studio. Creating a new live broadcast. Please wait.
Okay, I think it's a go. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Not getting any feedback. Oh, okay. Somebody's. Can you hear me? Please give me indication in the chat if I'm coming through. I'm not sure if this is working. Yeah, good. Okay, I got some feedback. Okay, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Okay, today I'm gonna keep going with the jhanas, and I think we're gonna have one more session on this topic next week. First of all, sorry for missing last week's stream. I had a dentist appointment. I couldn't move. So let's get started. I wanted to talk today about the analysis of the jhanas according to the five factors. This is probably very familiar to many people. I need to begin by pointing out that this scheme of the five jhana factors is only really explicit in the commentaries. It's kind of implied in the suttas, and that's what I want to deal with next week. Is the Suttanta approach to the four jhanas. But the scheme of the five factors is only laid out explicitly in the Visuddhimagga and the commentaries. What we see with the five factors is a progression from the more complicated and relatively coarse levels of mind to more simplified, purified, refined levels of mind. This is a very important concept that as we progress through the jhanas, the mind is becoming more purified, simplified. In a sense, it's reverting to its natural state. It's a more primordial, original state of mind before it's corrupted by the defilements. So, in brief, the five factors are Vitakka and Vicara. These usually go together. They're the factors of the common translation. I'll get into more detail about what they actually mean, but the common translation is applied and sustained thought. And then there's a Piti and Suka, which are common translations, rapture and bliss. And the final factor is Ekaggata. A common translation is one-pointedness. In the mind of the worldling, in the ordinary state of mind prior to jhana, that like the default human condition, there can be more or less of the five nivarana or hindrances. the sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, uh, anxiety and restlessness that they're put together as one, and skeptical doubt or lack of confidence. Now, these five are absent in first jhana. So this is these are the coarse factors that the mind rejects or moves away from or transcends in the transition from ordinary mind to jhana. So we right at the initial transition into the jhanas, we see a movement from the coarse to the subtle, and a purification that certain things are dropped away. And what we have in the first jhana are five factors that characterize the jhana. And these I've enumerated, and I'll discuss them in more detail. Vitakka and Vicara are faculties or energies of the mind that are used to manipulate objects of thought. So they occur in the ordinary mind as the energies behind cognitive thought and speech, because to perform those functions we have to grasp and manipulate objects of mind. In jhana, when the samadhi's developed enough, Vitakka and Vicara are still present in first jhana, but their function is narrowed or shifted to dealing with the object of the meditation, the nimitta. For example, the sensation of the breath in anapanasati. Vicara is more forceful. It's the mind grasping or striking an object, and Vicara is the mind holding the object. The Visuddhimagga has a number of similes to distinguish clarify the difference between Vitakka and Vicara. One of them is that if you have a gong and you're trying to maintain as far as possible a steady tone with the gong, you initially have to strike it with a stick to make it ring, and that's Vitakka, the striking of the gong. And then you have a steady tone, that's Vicara, but that will gradually fade, and then you have to strike it again, which is Vitakka. Another analogy is that if you're polishing a brass object and you're holding it like a candlestick, and you're holding it in your hand with one hand, and with the other hand you're rubbing it, the hand that holds it is Vicara, the hand that rubs it is Vitakka. I like that analogy with the gong because I think it points out the balance that should be maintained in the mind with dealing with the object in meditation. You need to initially strike the object with the mind, and so there's initially an element of forcefulness with the mind taking up the object, but then the mind should just hold the object steadily and peacefully. I've heard this compared to holding a raw egg in your hand. This is the Vicara. This is the way of holding the object. If you hold it too tightly, you'll break the egg and make a mess. If you hold it too loosely, you'll drop it on the floor and make a mess. But if you hold it steadily, firmly but gently, then you're holding it correctly. So this is another case where balance is needed in meditation. when you're holding the object well, it's evident to the mind, the breath or whatever object is clearly evident to the mind, there's no need to keep striking it. There's no need to be forceful with the mind, which will only cause weariness and disrupt the meditation. But if the mind's drifting off and you're losing track of the object, then you need to call in Vitakka and take a note of the object. I'll also mention here at this point that there is an alternate scheme that comes up in the Abhidhamma, analyzing the jhanas into 5 instead of 4. And they do this by breaking up first jhana into 2 phases. The first phase is with Vitakka and Vicara, and the second phase is with Vicara only. I think this this approach somewhat validates my own thinking about the jhanas, best looked at as a spectrum or a continuum, so that as you deepen in first jhana, Vitakka and Vicara gradually fade, and Vitakka fades away first, and then Vicara before you can enter into second jhana. So it's Vitakka and Vicara, the striking and the holding of the object. Because of their presence in first jhana can sometimes have some thought formation occurring, whereas certainly the mind, if in first jhana, will not be as busy or as prolific in its thought formation as ordinary mind, but it can still occur, and it doesn't mean that you've lost the jhana. The other factors, Piti and Suka, Ekaggata, are present in first jhana, and they're strengthened in second jhana. In second jhana, Vitakka and Vicara are absent. So this is a movement from the coarse to the subtle. The most in the transition from ordinary consciousness to first jhana consciousness, the hindrances are the coarse thing that's left behind, but also the senses, the physical senses, become less and less intrusive into the mind as we progress through the jhanas. And that which has been transcended at any level, you could think of it as being just outside the gate. We've transcended it, but it's not very far away, and it can pull us back if we're not diligent. So there's a saying that sound is a thorn to first jhana, because a sudden or sharp sound can pull the mind back into the sense fields, and the jhana can be disrupted. This becomes less and less of a problem in the higher jhanas. So Piti and Suka, let's start with Piti. Piti is most evident in second jhana. It's a characteristic factor of second jhana. Both Piti and Suka are mental factors that are experienced as pleasant, as joyful or pleasant. Piti is often translated as rapture. Some translators just prefer to call it happiness or joy. And it has physical correlates. Although it shouldn't be confused about this. It is a mental factor, but it does cause sensations in the body, and these are varied. They vary between the individuals and from time to time. Common ones are like goosebumps or thrills up the spine or shivers. And there are different grades of Piti that can be determined by the sensation. The highest form is called the uplifting Piti, which is a sense of lightness in the body. So there's an illusion of floating. You really feel like you're levitating. I think PT may be related to ideas or concepts in other systems such as Kundalini or Chi energy. It is a kind of energetic movement that's felt in the body, but it's the mental factors that is the dominant one in this analysis. One practical point, sometimes meditators will feel themselves involuntarily moving the body. Common one is like back and forth or swaying from side to side or in circles. This is a very coarse form of piti, and if you experiencing that, the best advice is to gently, not forcefully, but gently bring it to stillness. Make the body still, and that will force the piti to sublimate into a higher, more spiritual form. Piti has a very purifying and cleansing feeling and effect. Suka is the characteristic of second jhana, third jhana, when you, and again, here's a movement from coarse to subtle. We've already transcended interest in the senses and thought formation in second jhana. And now the coarsest factor remaining in the mind is piti. And although it seems very subtle and pleasant at first, it begins to seem coarse and heavy as we transition into third jhana, which is marked by Suka. The word Suka is used generally to mean pleasant feeling or happiness. But in the context of the Jhana factors, it means something a bit more. It means well, bliss is actually a good translation. It means a deep, profound happiness that's calm and peaceful. That's although the feeling tone is pleasant, there is an equanimity in the mind of not being disturbed by anything. There's no, unlike PT, there's no real physical effect other than a sense of complete ease and well-being in the body. There's no sense of stress or tension, but there's no movement in the body. And the mind is very much at peace. In the cosmological analog here, the difference between Piti and Suka is illustrated visually by the difference in the radiance of the second and third jhana Brahmas. All the Brahmas are radiant; they radiate light. In the Abhasara Brahmas of the second level, their light is said to flicker like a torch. And this to correlate to Piti, whereas the Brahmas of the third level, the Subhakina Brahmas, their radiance is said to be steady and clear like the full moon. So the remaining factor is Ekaggata. This is present in all four jhanas. Ekaggata is usually translated one-pointedness. I'm not really happy with that translation because the same reason I don't like concentration for samadhi, it tends to imply a narrowing of the mind. I prefer to call it mind gone to oneness or unification of mind. So the mind is filled with a single object, this unification of mind, not a division of mind flitting from object to object. I think this could be supported grammatically. In Pali language, many words are compounds, and such as this one, Ekaggata, it's a compound, and it's sometimes a problem because it's ambiguous depending on how you parse the compound. And I think gone to unity, Ekaggata, is supportable. But in any case, I think it's a better way of thinking about it. So in fourth jhana, even bliss fades away. Even bliss starts to seem coarse, and what's left is equanimity, upekkha, in a profound form of a great peacefulness. And of course, Ekaggata. So it's only two factors. Third jhana and fourth jhana both have two factors. In the case of third jhana, Suka and Ekaggata. In fourth jhana, Upekkha and Ekaggata. So all the way through, we see this movement from the coarse to the subtle. Sense experience can seem subtle and delightful to one in the world, but to one transitioning into jhana, it begins to seem coarse and heavy, and one leaves it behind. And then in first jhana, with Vitakka and Vicara, those are manipulative factors of mind related to thought. So that becomes the heaviest factor, the coarsest factor, and the mind begins to transcend that and shift into second jhana, which is without any thought formation. So one of our monks has a famous saying that if you find yourself wondering, am I in second jhana, the answer is always no. And second jhana has Piti, Suka, and Ekaggata. Then the Piti starts to seem coarse, and one transitions into third jhana. And then even bliss starts to seem coarse, and one transitions into fourth jhana, marked by equanimity. Before I conclude the formal remarks, there's one more aspect I just want to touch on. There's a interesting passage in the Visuddhimagga that relates the jhana factors to the hindrances one by one. So this could be a practical application for the meditator. If you find yourself having difficulty with one of the jhana factors, it could be related to a specific hindrance. So the factor of Vitakka is related or is opposed by the hindrance of tinamida, sloth and torpor. Well, if you're dull and sleepy, and there's no energy in the mind, you can't rouse up that quality of Vitakka, of striking the object, which requires a certain amount of energy in the mind. Vicara, the steady holding of the object, is opposed by Vicikiccha, or or skeptical doubt, or lack of confidence. If the mind is wavering in that way, it's not certain. It's wondering, am I doing it right? Is this the correct way? Then you can't just steadily hold the object. Piti is opposed by ill will, vipada, which seems kind of self-evident. If there's a irritation or anger in the mind, you can't rouse up that happiness and that kind of a thrilling sensation of piti. Suka, bliss, is opposed by uducha kucha, restlessness and worry. If the mind is restless and worried, fretting, it can't relax into that bliss. And Ekaggata, this singularity or unity of mind, is opposed by kamachanda, sense desire. As long as you're wandering around through the sense doors, you can't get that singularity of mind. So to review that, sloth and torpor opposes Vitakka, doubt opposes Vicara, ill will opposes Piti, restlessness and anxiety opposes Suka, and sense desire opposes Ekaggata. So I'll leave that there. Just a final note to transition into next week's topic. This is mostly taken, this analysis is mostly taken from the Visuddhimagga and the commentaries, and we'll deal next week with the discussion of the four jhanas in the suttas. Okay, so I'll leave it there, and we'll go to the chat and see what needs to be dealt with there. Okay, first question. Would you recommend metta and samatha meditation over vipassana to someone whose strongest hindrance seems to be vyapada and uddhacca kucha? Yeah, definitely vyapada. Metta is a very good antidote to that. And uddhacca kucha, any kind of samatha meditation, particularly mindfulness of breathing. Mindfulness of breathing is recommended specifically to overcome anxiety. So, if you have those hindrances strongly, you should work on them for a while, and then your vipassana will be much better if you can deal with those hindrances first. Question. I notice when I visualize energy in the area above my solar plexus, it's easy for me to generate metta. Do you know or use any professional techniques to stimulate or open heart chakra? Yeah, that's a very good question. I think metta meditation is it is a good preliminary to metta meditation, to center consciousness at the heart chakra. You can find references to the chakra system easily. The heart chakra is its Sanskrit name of it is Anhata, and it's a 12-petaled green lotus. So you can even use that as a visualization, and that will help to open and energize that chakra. Next one. Is it possible for nima to be misty like white light that moves, and how long should it move for? If it lasts for more than 5 minutes, should I go back to the breath? As visions usually happen in access concentration stage, nimitta or jhana stage. Okay, a couple of parts to that question. Uh, I think it's working with a nimitta in meditation is problematic. I think for many people. I think for most people, it's if you uh, compare like this, all this the emphasis on nimittas, visual nimittas, it comes from the Visuddhimagga, and uh, it's been criticized for. I think that if you look at the way the Visuddhimagga is written, he deals mostly with kasina meditation, and which is entirely visual. Um, in the Vimuttimagga, which is another less known text, it was the meditation manual of the Abhayagiri monastery, which is a rival of the Mahavihara. Uh, it covers much the same ground as the Visuddhimagga, but it has some subtle differences of approach. And one of the things it talks about is for anapanasati, the nimitta is not visual, but is tactile. And I think this works better for most people. That the sensation of the breath, instead of something totally unrelated as a visual form, the nimitta becomes a tactile sensation on the nose tip, so that initially the sensation observed by the mind in breathing is mostly the movement of the breath in and out. But that gradually fades until there's the steady nimitta, which the Vimuttimagga compares to a very light sensation, like pressing a ball of cotton batten against the nose. And you feel a light sense of steady touch, and the sense of movement fades and becomes, in the background, much less important. Also, the next part of your question. So, in summary of that, I think there are I would say there is a minority of people that the nimitta works well for. Visual nimitta works well for. But from what you describe, a misty nimitta that moves around, it doesn't sound like it's very conducive. It sounds like it'll keep the mind distracted. You should only really work with the nimitta if you can hold it steady and it doesn't move or change, and it's quite clear and steady. Otherwise, just ignore it and go back to the breath. That would be my advice. The visions usually happen in access stage, nimitta stage, or jhana stage. Again, I'm not really a big supporter of these breaking up in the stages into access and neighborhood concentration and so on. This is another flourish of the Visuddhimagga, and I don't think it really helps. I think it's better to, as I've repeated before, I think it's best and works best for developing samadhi to just to think of this whole process as a continuum of gradually deeper samadhi, and not to be too technical in breaking up these stages. Next one. Do our likes and dislikes influence rebirth? I've heard that people who are fond of tastes and smells are prone to be reborn as worms. How, for example, can musicians shape future lives? I think there's something to that. However whatever your mind emphasizes and obsesses over, it'll gradually shape your tendencies and it'll influence your rebirth. I don't know if I think it's a bit extreme to say that someone who's fond of flavors will become a worm. But if someone is obsessed with food, that's definitely going to tend to a lower rebirth, an animal rebirth of some kind. If that's their obsession of their mind. Um, Music is still within the sense desire sphere, but there's within the sense desire sphere there are levels and layers, and just as there are different genres of music, and you see this, the different Dewa realms gradually become more and more subtle, and music is a big part of the Dewa realms. But I think if the music one is fascinated by it is coarse, repetitive, loud music, that's going to tend to a lower level, whereas subtle, refined, something like uh, Bach or Gregorian chants or something like that, that would tend to elevate the mind, but not beyond the sense desire sphere. It still at best would be a Dewa rebirth. Okay, next question. From an ontological point of view, all beings are experiencing their subjective reality through a number of sense doors, including mental fabrications, thoughts, feelings, etc. All actions arise because there's an inherent sense of lack of go out through these doors, a constant sense of physical unease born of not knowing what can be let go of. What is stopping us from total non-action, meditating on sunyata, such that the body dies and all basis for further rebirth is gone? Well, that is pretty much the Jain perfection of the Jain school, that they're the perfect being or the saint in the Jain religion is one who just stops doing anything, doesn't eat, doesn't move, and just lets himself fade away and die. Now, that's not been the Buddhist approach, because that the criticism of that approach would be that it causes suffering, which is making negative karma in itself. If you're starving yourself to death, then you're not transcending karma. You're making new bad karma by inflicting suffering upon yourself. Next. Hi, Ajahn. Greetings from Sweden. Please explain the difference between internal and external jhana. Why can jhana be both an inner state and visit to a Brahma realm? What causes the difference? Well, the difference is in the Abhidhamma, they analyze the state of mind of the four jhanas as being either as an attainment or as an existence. So if you're a meditator, a human meditator who enters jhana, you're experiencing that state of mind. And the parallel state of mind is the ordinary state of consciousness of a Brahma being. But for them, that's not a special attainment, it's their natural existence. And the way to be reborn in the Brahma realm is to master jhana. How to train oneself to be content. I have a lack mindset and it only makes me unhappy and makes my practice harder. The contentment is a very good quality to develop. There's a Mahayana text that has a saying that contentment is the wish-fulfilling jewel. In Indian fairy stories, mythologies, they're always seeking the wish-fulfilling jewel, the jewel that will grant all your wishes. But if you've got contentment, you have the wish-fulfilling jewel because you're not wishing for anything you don't already have. So all your wishes are fulfilled. if if this is a problem for you, you constantly find yourself, having this mindset. You call it a lack mindset, this desire for things you don't have. Is first of all to be conscious of it, how painful it is, and how it causes suffering, and let it go. Learn to do without. It might be useful for you to do periods of time for a day or a weekend or longer, to follow the 8 precepts and deliberately restrain yourself from indulging in even minor sense pleasures, and work with that. See that desire come up, and see you have the power not to fulfill the desire, and watch it fade. Usually, how long does it take for one to have Ekaggata and full focus on breath till one goes into Jhana? Does the breath have to stop before you enter Jhana and Nimitta? No, the breath does not have to stop, and there's no there's no kind of time limit that one could say. Uh, it all depends on how purified your mind state is. If you completely abstracted from the 5 nivarna, then jhana should follow naturally from there. But if you keep going out to sense objects, or doubts arise in the mind, then that's what holds you back, and you won't get into jhana no matter how long you work at it. You have to really purify yourself from the hindrances. But also understand, when we talk about the hindrances in jhana, that jhana doesn't eliminate the hindrances. That comes from advanced stages of vipassana, but it suppresses the hindrances, or it makes them quiet or quiescent. It puts them to sleep. Why is it deemed not important whether the universe is infinite or not? Well, what difference does that make to your experience here and now? There's no way we can know the answer to that, and it doesn't make any difference to your existence here and now, whether the world is infinite or not. Can you explain being immersed in the body during the stages of jhana? Talks about Suka, but also says immersed in the body for the jhana stages of absorption. I think I'm going to be dealing with that next week. I'm going to go through the you cite Majjhima 119. That's one of the texts I'm going to be looking at. So I'll put that question aside. I should cover it next week. One time I was lying in bed and felt something grab me by the leg and pull me from my body. Next I was floating, there was a vortex made of golden rings pulling me in. Then I woke up. What do you think it was? What beings had power to do such thing to a human? Felt like a lucid dream. Felt different than a lucid dream. But it could be possibly, it could be an actual projection of the astral body. That is something actually mentioned as one of the abhinyas. So it is part of the Buddhist system, the idea of a mind-made body. That's possible if it wasn't, purely a dream. And really, what's the difference? How does enter jhana feel different from being hypnotized? I don't know. I don't really know about hypnosis. I've never been hypnotized or had any experience of that. Is giving catnip to cats bad since it gets them high? I don't know. I don't really think so. I don't think cats are. I don't think they I don't think they have any sense of keeping precepts. I'm losing track of this here. After years of meditation, do your legs still go numb when you sit in half lotus? Occasionally, yeah. I mean, there's no real harm with their legs going numb. People are worried they're going to do damage or something. It's not. There's no harm to it. It just makes it a little harder to get up. You gotta kind of rub your leg to get the feeling back. It doesn't really matter. I practice Mahasi method of Vipassana. Can I use the abdomen to pay the breath for samatha? Possibly, but there'd be a difference. In the Mahasi method, the attention given to the abdomen should be broad, the whole area of the stomach. Whereas if you're using the abdomen for samatha, it's better to have a more pointed focus, and use the method that they do in Zen of find a point mentally somewhat below the navel, that's where you naturally feel like that's the center of the attention. The Japanese call that the heart point, and it's actually also used in martial arts when they do their moves, their jumps and kicks and things. They see themselves as moving around that point because it's considered to be the point of gravity, the center point of the body, and you're moving around that point. So that's the point you should be resting on if you're using the abdomen for samatha. Okay. Adding to your insight about Jains, what if you are released before dying, say from starvation? And I didn't mean a gradual death in mind question, but rather an instant transcendence. I don't know how you get an instant transcendence by non-action. That doesn't really seem practicable. You misunderstood my question. I asked about the difference between internal jhana and visiting a Brahmaram with a mind-made body. Are the two states different? Yeah, they would be different. Visiting a Brahmaram with a mind-made body, it would be an abhinya, a psychic power that's derived from jhana. But it's not, the mind doing that is not really at that point of time in jhana in the narrow definition. It's a derivative of jhana. Would you say that metta is most effective for absorption as long as it is not just a chant type wish, but embracing love, deep compassion rather than repetition? Can you speak to it? Yeah, I support that idea. I believe that the best, the true object of metta meditation is the feeling, the mental state of loving kindness, and using chants or visualization should be aimed at promoting that state of mind. And then when that state of mind is strong, you don't need any other external support. You can just rest in the pure metta. And I think that's the purest form of it. Okay, I think I'll maybe look at one or two more and then call an end. Is there a sutta in which the Buddha specifically talks about lust and sensual pleasure? Yes, there is more than one. I would get I don't have the numbers at hand, but get a hold of the Majjhima Nikaya and look in the index for sense desire. And there's several sutras specifically to that point in that collection. Is the jhana in the Sutta different than those mentioned in the sutra by the Buddha? Um, well, we'll talk about that next week. I think it's the same, but it's the analysis is phrased quite differently, and it's a different way of looking at it. Final question: does your cat have a name? Yes, I've named him Morko, Morko, and I'll leave that as an exercise to the listener to figure that out. Okay. Okay, and we'll see you next week. Next week will be the concluding session on the jhanas.